Hi, everyone. Welcome back to Notepad Answers. We're your hosts, Dr. Ray Ciervo and Allie Kilmurray. This show will help you get a better understanding of the Bible, Christianity, and worldview. Let's go ahead and jump into it. We have to start over.
Go ahead.
Okay. Hi, everyone. Welcome back to Notepad Answers. We're your hosts, Dr. Ray Ciervo and Allie Kilmurray. This show will help you get a better understanding of the Bible, Christianity, faith, and worldview. Let's go ahead and jump into today's episode.
There we are. Hi, Al.
Hey, Poppy. Dr. Ray.
That's all right.
Which one? I'm always jumping back and forth. My
No, Poppy's
grandfather,
fine.
Dr. Ray, Poppy. But I
Yeah.
think we've been on long enough now that everyone knows that you are my grandfather.
I think that should be pretty understandable. I think I mentioned it. So, yeah.
Yeah, and probably a little evident because we share some of the same features.
Yeah. You're just much prettier.
I don't think so. We came from somewhere. Okay, so today we are going to talk about your latest trip.
Yeah. Back now. Where are we? We're back now 2 weeks or 3 weeks, actually.
Yes. Yep.
Yeah.
We are mid-March now.
Yeah. 3 weeks tomorrow. I came back on it was the 24th. I landed on the morning of Saturday, the 24th of February, and I left here on the 2nd, or the 1st of February, arrived in South Africa on the 2nd. Yeah.
Yes, so you spent a total of how many days in South Africa?
I was there 3 weeks, so I was there 21 days from start to finish. Yeah. Maybe
That's
22
awesome.
days. Yeah.
I was just wondering what was the beginning of going to South Africa? When did this originally start?
Yeah. So I went the first time 14 years ago, 2010. I believe it was in May of 2010 that I went the first time with a group of other men who had graduated from Southern Evangelical Seminary. And I think there were some who were still students. I can't remember. It was that long ago. But we had the opportunity of traveling with William Lane Craig.
Hmm.
So that was a big deal, and that's actually what pushed me over the edge to go, because for all intents and purposes, I didn't want to go back to Africa. I'd been there 30 years before that,
Wow.
and was there for a month, and it wasn't a great trip. It wasn't to South Africa; it was to Tanzania, and it
Wow.
was very different.
That's awesome. Let's talk about some of your highlights on this past trip that you took. Some of your most favorite things that happened, or maybe some of the most favorite things that you were a part of.
Yeah. So I teach at a Bible college there that is run by a group, a ministry called Apologetics SA for South Africa. And they run a 2-year Bible college that goes over some really great things. They have their first year is all learning the scripture. They have to read, the students have to read every book of the Bible 5 times during
Wow.
that. Yeah, it's a 9-month year, I believe. And so they have to go through the scripture, they have to read it, highlight things, break it down, interpret it. First do observation, then interpretation. So they do an inductive Bible study on the whole Bible. And then the second year, it's just a bunch, I call it a bunch, it's a list of electives that they teach and learn there. So I was teaching the second year this time around. I taught the same group last year. I taught them First and Second Corinthians, And this year I taught the 3 weeks, I taught learning to think critically or critical thinking, introduction to apologetics, and then worldview. So those are 15 hours or more. We're in class from 9 till 1 every day with
Wow.
maybe a 45-minute break in between. So it's a little over 3 hours. And yeah, I really enjoy doing that. I find this group of young people are really hungry and they're motivated learners, to say that. So, yeah.
Yeah, which is probably very encouraging.
Yeah, I think the first time I went to this Bible college was under a different name at first, and that was in, I believe it was 2016, if I remember right. It might be 2015. It was like 8 years ago was the first time I went, and I went every year, twice a year, until COVID, and then
Wow. It's a
yeah,
year.
during COVID, I wasn't there for 3 years. So last year was the first year I went back. And yeah, so the highlight of my trip is working with the students and meeting former students. Some of the former students are coaches in the Bible college now. That's one of the things that they do. And so it was seeing them again. And we had the second Saturday I was there, we had what in South Africa they call a braai. We would call it a barbecue, but theirs is a lot more specific on how they would do it. A real braai is done with wood, and they get the coals heated up for probably most of the day, but they would say that a real braai is done over an open fire. If I'm not mistaken, I'm sure I'll get corrected on that. But
If it's wrong, drop a comment.
yeah, so yeah, we had about 4 hours together on that Saturday night, and there had to be upwards of 25 people there, if I'm not mistaken. And not all the students I've taught in the past showed up. I don't know if they were all invited. I wasn't in charge of who was being invited.
Right.
So, yeah, that was a lot of fun to see them and catch up with them, see who's married now and who has children, who's getting married. It's a real exciting time. And I feel really joined to this group of people. They're mostly white South Africans, Afrikaners, so their heritage is that they're Afrikaners. They're not British. That's a different whole subsection of the population. So, yeah.
Yeah,
And
that's awesome.
yeah, one of the things, I mean, I learn something new about the culture every time I go. And like for them, most of them, English is a second language. So I have to be very aware of that when I use things that are common to us as Americans.
Right.
And yeah, so I have to be real conscious of that when I'm doing that. When I'm speaking or doing something, sometimes jokes don't go across. And other times, you miss little cues. But for the most part, it's easy to communicate, and it's something. Going to South Africa, let me say it this way, is the highlight of my year, and
That is
teaching in
great.
the Bible college. Yeah,
Yeah, that's awesome.
yeah.
And you kind of touched on the courses that you taught. So what are the courses that you taught, and were there any other events that you were able to partake in?
Yeah, so I taught critical thinking. We used a book that a friend of mine wrote called How to Think by Juan Valdez, that really is an introduction to critical thinking and a little bit of logic. So we went through that. And then we used another book that was written by a different graduate from Southern Evangelical Seminary, and I put my own spin on Introduction to Apologetics. And then we used James Sire's book called The Universe Next Door, which is a catalog on worldview. So that was the 3 weeks again. And then I spoke to 3 different meetings that were held by Ratio Christi. Ratio Christi is a student-run apologetics ministry in South Africa now. They started here in the United States, actually started by another friend of mine, Simon Brace, when we were at Charlotte, North Carolina. Actually, he attended after me and started Ratio Christi. And now they've imported it to South Africa, and I think in some other countries. But it's on college campuses all around the U.S., and I spoke at 2 what they would call kickoffs of their meetings, one on a Wednesday night and another on a Tuesday night. And then I spoke at a Ratio Christi conference in Johannesburg, I believe it was. The other 2 were in Pretoria, if I'm not mistaken.
You were in a couple of different places.
Yeah. I'm mainly in Pretoria when I go there. And Pretoria's one of the capitals. I think there are 2 capitals or 3 capitals in South Africa. One is an economic capital, one's a legislative capital, which is Pretoria. And then there's another one. I think it's Bloemfontein is another one that I'm not sure why that is another capital. So.
Yeah, it's interesting. So I have a question. When you speak at something like was it a kickoff?
Yeah.
You said? Is that, is it like a teaching style or an encouraging?
Yeah, I was asked to teach a little bit to lay out what I wrote in my book, Apologetics for the Rest of Us. I kind of give that. It was a new group that was just starting out. And that one was actually on if I'm not mistaken, it's a Afrikaans college. So in other words, all their subjects are taught in Afrikaans, but obviously they let me speak English because I'm extremely limited in vocabulary in Afrikaans. But the other one was one that's been going on for a while in Pretoria, and I spoke on, I'm trying to think now, remember what I talked. I talked about turning skeptics into seekers. I have a little course that I do on that. And so I was helping them with some of their evangelism in teaching how to turn skeptics into seekers, basically how to engage in conversation with unbelievers. So, which was a lot of fun.
Yeah.
And then I spoke twice at a church called Collage, which is, again, an Afrikaans church on Sunday morning and then on Sunday night. And that was for the pastor that I met last year. I spoke in that church also. So, yeah, both of those sessions were really good. I appreciate getting to see the churches in action, in their meetings anyway.
Yeah, is it very similar to how our churches are here?
Yeah, they are, especially among the white churches, white South African churches. It's still pretty, except for some of your mega churches might have a little bit more of what we would call black Africans and white South Africans, maybe a little bit more. But then, from what I can tell, there's still a lot of segregation. That's not a great word, but separation of the races when it comes to that. And this is just one small part of South Africa, too. I've been to a township there on some of my first visits, which is obviously all black Africans and very low income. Most of them are settlements from people from other countries in Africa coming to South Africa.
Wow.
Yeah, and another highlight I would say was spent an afternoon with Emma Vanderwalt, who's Walt. Yeah, gotta get it straight. Emma runs a ministry called Brave to Love that has changed from being an evangelistic ministry to ministering to prostitutes and drug addicts and really going after the sex trade and human trafficking. And her and one of the men who works with her as her bodyguard, we've had a couple of times together and some interaction, and that she has a new book that it should be coming out. I think it's already out on Kindle, called She Is Safe, which is basically a testimony of girls that she has rescued. She has a great ministry there in South Africa. I forgot the number. If you go to her website called bravetolove.org, I believe it is.
We'll link it. We can link that in our bio too.
Yeah.
Just so people can, if they want to visit it.
Yeah, that would be good.
Yeah, click the link in.
Yeah, see, the last time I looked, I believe it was over 100 women that she has rescued. And
yeah, that's amazing.
South Africa is, I believe it's the rape capital of Africa, as well as it's the landing place for women who are being trafficked, women and children that are being trafficked, men, women, and children that are being trafficked. And then they're dispersed all through the area, the nations, the continent. Yeah, so could spend the whole time just about talking about that. Yeah.
Yeah, we definitely could, and maybe we will spend a whole video talking about that.
I'd like to finish reading her book and maybe do a book review on that. But that's
good.
Yeah, that was very powerful. And you don't realize how much of that stuff goes on all over the world.
Yeah.
Yeah. What was the movie that came out not too long ago? Cries of Freedom, I think it was.
Yeah, or, I forget.
That looks at Tim Ballard's ministry.
Yeah.
Yeah. Not really ministry, but his organization that rescues women and children that have been brought into the sex trade. It's a horrible thing that goes on in our world.
It is, and we need to definitely be aware.
Yeah.
Yeah, and praying for these ministries.
Absolutely.
That are doing
I keep busy when I'm in South Africa, and I try to guard my time as much as I can, because I would do something every morning, afternoon, and evening and I'd be worn out in a week. But for some, I have a little bit of adrenaline flowing. It keeps me going the whole time. And I'm staying in one small area in South Africa. There's friends that I have down in Potchefstroom that have been there for 5 or 6 years already, doing some tremendous work. And then there's a whole world down in Cape Town on the southern tip of South Africa. I was there the first time I went to South Africa, but I haven't been back since. And I've never been to the West Coast. I've never been to that area, other than when I was in the South, Cape Town. We did go up the west side of South Africa a little bit and see the countryside, and went to a church or two there. So there's a whole lot that goes on there. And we had three of the people from Apologetics SA with us back in October. John Grobler and Suzette Ellis and Tilly Corner were with us for a little over a week, about 8 or 9 days. So it was really a lot of fun. And we got to show them a little bit of this part of the world, New Jersey, New York, and especially the shore. So,
Yeah, it's amazing. When you come back from a trip like this, are you feeling encouraged?
Yeah, and I'm usually, it's a great question because aside from being physically exhausted and maybe even mentally exhausted, I'm very up spiritually. I'm very encouraged. I feel like I get as much from them as, if not more, than I give to the people I minister to. As I mentioned, for the last 8 years, we've been working with this one group that is, to me, it's the right way to do things because I get to build relationships with them. And we get to see their work progress and really see all the investments that we do spiritually. We see
That's
something,
amazing.
something happening there. So, which is great. And
Yeah,
there,
I
I was
think
going to
that's
say that
just
there's
the way God
something,
intended it.
yeah, there's something in my heart for South Africa and for what God is doing there. And it's, our church here has started to get involved there to help them financially and minister. That's what we want to do is we want to help them minister. And
Yeah,
we want to teach them the brand of philosophy, if I could say that, and the way that we view reality, good theology. And we don't realize how much we have here in the U.S. that the rest of the world is just in such need for.
yeah,
And yeah, and getting them good theology, teaching them good philosophy and worldview is just so helpful. It's life changing. You see it in the students. You see their lives change, which is really encouraging.
yeah. It's a beautiful thing.
Absolutely.
Yeah, so that is it. That is a good recap on some of what you do in South Africa.
Yeah.
I love to see the pictures
Yeah.
and hear the background stories.
Yeah. I'm terrible at getting everybody together and say, hey, let's get a photograph. There are so many times that I was with somebody, and after we leave, I said, oh, man, we didn't get a picture. And Joanne, Grandma would always say to me, why didn't you take pictures? So, and it's not like they're
Yeah,
opposed to it, but you just get caught up in everything else.
yeah. And I always think it's really great because you're not on your phone and you're not thinking about what's on your phone. And like you said, here in America, we're glued to our phones all the time.
Yeah,
So you were just there and you were in it. And it's
absolutely.
understandable for grandma because she's usually one taking all the pictures.
Yeah. And
So now none of us,
yeah, and getting everybody together to take the picture.
yep, and none of us even think of it. If grandma's not there, we're just like do do do.
Exactly. And speaking of Grandma, we're looking for her to come with me next time around. So we're penciled in to go back in August, which is their winter. You remember
Oh
their,
wow.
yeah, so
Yeah,
it's a
they're
little bit cooler there.
they're opposite.
Yeah, they think it's cold, and I think it's refreshing, because I'm coming
Yeah,
from
it's
a hot
nice.
August in New Jersey and going to, wet weather in the 80s or 70s at least in the daytime.
That is nice.
So it's very, yeah, a little chilly in the
It'll
morning, but
be
you put a sweater on, you're fine.
it'll be it might be 110 degrees here in
Yeah,
August in Florida.
yeah. In Florida, for sure. Actually,
Yeah.
this year in New Jersey, we were banging on 90 degrees and 100 degrees more than a few times.
It was
So,
very hot there last summer. I
yeah,
remember comparing degrees with you several times, and we were only off maybe 1 or 2 degrees. I was like, whoa, it
yeah,
was really hot there.
yeah. So, yeah, so we're looking to, there'll be the second time Grandma will be with me and go with me, but everybody's always asking for her. When is she coming back?
Yeah,
So we're
that'll be
planning
great.
on doing it. Yeah, we'll probably go for 2 weeks. So instead of 3, 3 weeks was long. It was.
Yes. 3 weeks is long to be
I hadn't.
very far from home and so busy.
Yeah, I hadn't been that away that long from her, from Grandma, in 40 years.
Oh,
Yeah.
that is a very long time.
Yeah, I remember the first time I went to England, I went for, not the first time, but one of the first times I went to England, I went for 6 weeks.
Oh my
And
gosh.
yeah, your dad and Uncle Joe and AJ they were, young, they were kids. And I remember my dad scolding me, saying, because he and my mom came to the airport when I came back, and he scolded me for being away from home that long. Yeah.
That's a
So,
long time.
yeah, it
That was
definitely
the
was.
first time and the last time that you were gone for 6 whole weeks.
Yeah. After that, I think I went a couple of times for 4 weeks. Like the first time I went to Africa, I went for 4 weeks. And
Still pretty long.
I went to England, where I would itinerate the whole time, which was totally tiring.
Okay.
You're preaching in a different place every night, and
Mhm.
you don't see the product of what you're sowing and what you're doing. And I'm not built that way.
Yeah.
So I want to have a relationship with the people that I'm working with, and just see their lives change, as well as build that relationship, which is what we're doing now
Yeah.
in
And that's
South
amazing.
Africa.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah. And I know you said you are still in touch with your past students and you're able to see how they are living and carrying forth what they've learned. And that's just amazing.
it is. Yeah, it's very encouraging.
Yeah.
Yeah, God's doing something, especially among this group. I can't speak for all of South Africa, but from what I hear, it's happening everywhere. People are just motivated to learn the scripture and walk with the Lord. And that's
Yeah.
very encouraging. It makes it very easy to impart things. And
Yes.
yeah, I have a good rapport with John Grobler and the students that he works with. Just something I could only say God did it. It's something that God does. So yeah, and the food is good. So that's always a
It's always a plus.
that's always a
It's
plus
always
right
a
there.
plus for a foodie like us.
That's right. Yeah. So
Okay, that's great. That's awesome. So our video on South Africa. Yeah, if you guys have any questions about what goes on in South Africa, or if you're curious about anything at all, always feel free to drop a comment underneath. Again, if you like what we do here at Notepad Answers, please subscribe. If there's anything you'd like to talk about, here are our emails. Feel free to email any of us with any questions at all. We would love to cover it in a video. Thank you so much for joining us today. We'll be back soon.